We are excited to go to the Stanley Fencing and Gates hotline to welcome to the show Bill Connelly with ESPN.com, the man who created the SP Plus for us to follow and keep up with what's happening. And Bill, a year ago this time, your numbers had Tennessee top 10 going in. I think a lot of people were like, that feels like a bit of a stretch. And top 10, that's where they were at the end of the season. I think number 6 during the offseason heading into this year. What do those numbers tell you after the way last year went? What do you think now that the season is just a few weeks away?
Yeah, I mean, I think it lays things out pretty clearly. They're projected third on offense, and even with a quarterback change, it's hard to doubt Josh Heupel at this point. We know, I mean, he's been running the system for a while. He's one of the few coaches left that can really use tempo as a weapon. Everybody else has kind of adjusted to it, and it's hard to develop an advantage from that. He's going to have a good offense no matter who the quarterback is. And if Joe Milton isn't the guy, then call up the next guy, and they're going to score a lot of points. And I think that's they have one of the most proven units in football, and that's going to take them a long way. If they're going to finish 6th, though, Milton probably needs to click, and the defense needs to play at it was basically a top 30-ish level again. But I don't see why not. I think they've proven a lot over the last couple of years, and everything they lost seems relatively replaceable, especially if what we saw from Milton in the bowl game is what we're going to see for most of the year.
Joe Milton's been a hot topic. A lot of Tennessee fans feel confident in Joe Milton because that Clemson performance, but there's some doubters because he has been a starter multiple times, multiple teams. Your confidence in Tennessee being successful this year, is it more so about Josh Heupel's offense and your belief in the quarterback is going to play well no matter what, or do you believe that Joe Milton is, in fact, ready to take that next step? Where do you lean most on there?
Well, it's funny. At this point, we know exactly why everybody should be high on Milton and exactly why everybody should be wary. His arm is crazy, like 90 yards, whatever in the air kind of arm, like something we rarely see at the college level. But he's won a starting job twice, and he's lost a starting job twice. He's taken too many sacks. He sometimes can be his patience at times can turn into just slow decision making at other times, and we've seen all of his upside and downside. The question just heading into this final year, when he gets a third chance, college quarterbacks don't usually get third chances, and it's just a question of in his third year in this system, with the maturity and everything he's learned over the last 5 seasons, can that downside be minimized enough to take advantage of what is just ridiculous upside? I think there's no way around that. We know he's going to have the Heupel offense is always going to have a ridiculously explosive slot receiver. Squirrel White appears to be the next guy in line. And if he can just kind of take advantage of what's around him and not get lulled into taking too many sacks, which he did take some sacks against Clemson too, even while playing really well. If the ball can get out of his hands fast and he can keep things moving forward, they're going to score so many points this year.
Bill Connelly is with us, ESPN.com. He has the college football SP Plus rankings. And you mentioned the defensive side. If Tennessee can be about a top 30 defense, what would constitute that? What would stand out about what maybe Tennessee's defense needs to be if the offense is close to what it's capable of?
Well, let's just say that last year they finished 21st. That's where when I updated everything, that's where they finished last season. And so you kind of get the idea there. This was a really good run defense. Pass defense was kind of passive. They didn't necessarily get enough disruption out of the secondary. The pass rush was basically a one-man show with Byron Young, who's obviously gone. So if they have enough there that they're not suffering any sort of major regression, especially up front, then they should be fine. And obviously, there's a balance here. If the offense takes a couple steps backwards and the defense takes a couple steps forward, everything's fine. But we kind of know that we understand with Heupel, they're going to see a lot of plays. They're going to see a lot of drives. They're going to get into track meets occasionally. But they made enough stops last year to win big. And, that's kind of the model for this year. They don't have to be top 5, but if they can beat last year's defense, that's going to win a lot of games.
Bill, when you go through Tennessee's schedule in the SEC, so Florida on the road, South Carolina and A&M are at home. Tennessee's going to play Alabama and Georgia. What stands out, Kentucky as well mixed in, what stands out about what Tennessee's facing, how the SEC kind of stacks up going into the year?
Yeah, there are a lot of they're not toss-ups. They're almost like borderline toss-ups. Like SP Plus has them by favored by 6.5 over Florida, 7.5 against A&M, 7 against Kentucky. Basically, I mean, you don't want to say this is a 2-game schedule because it's not. I mean, 7 points is one bounce away from being a toss-up, right? Like that's there's plenty of work to be done here. But if Milton really is, top 5, top 10 quarterback in the country this year, it's a 2-game schedule. It's unless the defense takes some massive step backwards, and it's kind of interesting to see how this is all taking shape and how expectations have changed pretty quickly in Tennessee. I mean, you're right. Like SP Plus saw something in the way they went about going 7-6 in 2021. It was pretty clear that they were much closer to something really big, and then they kind of hit it big, and they should be in good position to do so again. It's going to take quarterback play. Heupel gets the benefit of the doubt, but nothing's guaranteed. But I see a top 10 team here, just looking through the roster and everything else.
Georgia, the best team in the country. They do have to replace Bennett. They have to replace key players. They'll do that with other talent. Does it start with Georgia, and what is the gap there behind the Bulldogs if they're number one?
Yeah, they obviously have to start up there. It's for many, many obvious reasons. But I'm curious about the gap because one of the things we're seeing is teams with very good rosters still kind of loading up on transfers to a certain degree. Brian Kelly at LSU, for instance, and of course USC and plenty of others. I'm really curious what that means because Kirby Smart doesn't need the transfer portal. He's very content with his pipeline of blue chippers at basically every position. But is it possible to kind of close the gap on Georgia with key transfers and key situations? I'm really curious about LSU this year. Alabama obviously didn't do too much in the transfer portal other than Buchner, especially at the end of spring. But yeah, it's an opportunity for teams, and I'm just curious about whether any of it matters or whether Georgia's upside is just too immense to matter at all. You can see how Georgia gets into a tricky situation this year. Just when you think about the simple fact that teams don't three-peat, it's very hard to keep your attention span over that period of time. And if there's some fluky game, at Auburn or somewhere else over the first 2/3 of the season, then suddenly they head to Knoxville, against a potentially top 5 or 10 level Tennessee team in kind of a must-win situation. And things happen when you try to three-peat, and that's why teams don't usually pull it off. But they obviously are going to be the favorite. They're obviously going to start out on top. There's no way else to start the season with Georgia on top.
Bill Connelly, ESPN.com, here with us. Last year, you were really the only guy that was really high on Tennessee. Is there a team this year going into the season that you feel like, all right, I'm probably the lone person on the island believing in this team more than everyone else? Who's this year's Tennessee in your opinion?
Yeah, I think, I hate this answer, and I'm not the only one saying this by any means, but it's really fun when the media always picks Texas to be like top 10 or feels like they always do, and then they end up, falling apart or whatever. It's very easy to see how Texas could be a top 5 or 10 team this year. They were almost that last year. They lost 5 games by like a total of 25 points, won a bunch of blowouts, almost beat Alabama, beat Kansas State, the conference champion. They were very close to something a lot higher, and now they've got probably the best offensive and defensive lines in the Big 12. They're going to have, if Quinn Ewers can't live up to hype, then he's got a couple of extremely capable backups who very well might. They were 2-5 in one-score finishes last year, and Sarkisian himself has plenty to prove in that regard. But just when you're looking at things on paper, it's very easy to see why Texas starts the year as Big 12 favorite, and potentially even more than that. It's again, I'm not the only one saying that. I know they were pretty like 10th or something in the coaches poll. They'll probably be pretty far up there, but kind of like talking about Tennessee a year ago. Everybody's like, oh yeah, sure, we've been here before. Yeah. There's a reason we're here now, and chances are they're going to be really good.
Another school in the state of Texas, how did SP Plus manage the arrival of Bobby Petrino with the Aggies program?
Yeah, I don't do anything with coordinator changes, and I think his general career arc would make that pretty difficult. But typically when Bobby Petrino shows up somewhere, for whatever period of time, things get better. Things eventually get worse too, but that's for later on. Chances are, with Connor Wigman and a really, really good receiving core, one that it was not justice for them to struggle as much as they did last year, considering the talent that got there with Stewart and Muhammad, and now Aniyah Smith coming back. It's really hard to see them not having at least like a top 30 or 40 offense. And if they had that last year, they lost so many close games last year, and their defense should be top 10. It's again, I wish I had some fun answer like, hey, the most underrated team, Purdue or South Carolina or something like that. I'm saying Texas and A&M, but it's very clear that they have a lot of potential if the offense can just be decent.
Do you have a fade of the year, so a team that you're probably not as high on?
I'm kind of still waiting to see where Florida State ends up here in terms of the betting odds, or I guess at this point just the AP poll where they land. I think that's one that I see them as a top 10 team for sure, but they've gotten some top 5 hype. And I think the other one is because Michigan beat Ohio State for 2 years in a row, it seems like they're kind of viewed as a slam dunk, easy Big Ten favorite. And they certainly have a lot of experience, and they could be, but I still see that as a 2-team race. And so if building up Ohio State a little bit means fading Michigan a little bit, plus Penn State on the horizon, I do think maybe it'll be a little tougher for them than the betting odds suggest.
Also, Bill, before you go, if I saw correctly, I know a number of different pieces to preview the season are coming out with the SEC. Was your favorite future wager, if you wanted to throw a sprinkle on something, was that Joe Milton and the Heisman?
It was. I mean, it's a gamble for very, very clear reasons, but we know what will happen in this offense if he clicks. And his Heisman odds were wherever you get your odds are probably in the plus 2,000 range. I can see it working out a little better than that at least. It's funny with Milton and Texas and all these teams we're talking about. We know exactly what the downside is and how things could go horribly awry, but man, if it clicks, it's going to be pretty spectacular.
He is the spreadsheet king. Go check out SP Plus at ESPN.com. Bill, we always appreciate you taking time to join us. Thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thank you.